Grace and peace to those who do the will of our Father in heaven. I've been reading a book lately, and I have some thoughts that I'm going to share on it. And part of it has to do with Kamala Harris as well. I understand a little bit more about her role, even though some of that may not really come to fruition, but I kind of get an idea for what she represents after reading this book. And I'm going to show you an image right here from, this was Miss Magazine. I believe this was the very first issue of this feminist magazine, and they chose to use the image of Kali on the cover. And that what that really shows is the spirit behind feminism. And this whole book really goes over, I'll go over some of the notes that I wrote, but the spiritual nature of feminism from the very start, like the propaganda that we've been fed about the motivations behind feminism is exactly what I said, is propaganda. And you'll have to excuse me because, you know, as most of you know, I'm all over the place. Especially if I don't work from a script, and I'm not working from a script, so my non-linear thought is going to be really a problem. But so again, the spirit in feminism is spiritual from the very beginning, and I guess the identity or the person of Kali is one who represents not just well, she is, as you see right here, a dark mother. So she is the feminine spirit that how do I put this, that is destructive, but basically I guess you could say weaponized rage, weaponized anger, fury, the woman who is not to be trifled with, or the woman who is out for a reckoning, basically. And that's kind of I would say that is the mascot of feminism when you really get down to it. Because other so-called goddesses they all have different roles, but Kali fits the role of feminism because feminism is attempting to overturn an order. And so you need this sort of destructive warrior force, not this kind or this loving or seductive force. Even though Kali can be seductive, I suppose, that's not really what they're going for. They are going for the spirit that will overturn, that will destroy in order to rebuild. And so I think that sums up what Kali is representing. And so I had made 2 videos on her about 4 years ago over the last election. And in these videos, I was pointing out some of the symbolism of Kamala Harris. In his video, I call her Kali Ma Devi Harris, because the name Devi, well, Devi is just like diva, means goddess, but that is specifically the name of the Hindu goddess. In the Hindu goddess, one of her many forms is Kali, and especially in this video, one of her names also means lotus. Kamala's name, I believe her name means lotus, Kamala. And in this video, you see the lotus. I just go ahead and click on the video. I don't want to actually play the video. Well, I'm going to mute it. There you go. So her name means lotus, and in this video I go over the similarities between the goddess and this character here as well. But I'm trying to get to, wait a minute, where's it at? There it is. Alright, so out of the forbidden fruit, out of the apple, which is a symbol for Venus, the apple, you see the lotus blossom, which represents enlightenment, right? Enlightenment and death and rebirth. But in this instance, it's related to Kamala. And this feminism is meant to take women, especially, is especially aimed at women, to guide us into a new age, or a new enlightened age, and a new enlightened period. Let me adjust this so that you can actually see the whole image on the screen. It's supposed to be taking us to a utopia, and I guess I get into how some of these women behind it are extremely spiritual. But looking at Kamala now and understanding how she kind of fits with the goal of feminism, as I almost forgot, as I also said in these videos back then, I do believe that Kamala was meant to replace Joe Biden, and I don't think that plan had changed, or at least I don't think that plan, it was intended to go a certain way, but I get the feeling that Joe Biden kind of didn't go along with things as the way he was supposed to. He did look pretty upset that he was more or less pushed out of office. And maybe the case is that he didn't know. Not saying that I was right, not saying that I know exactly what's going to happen, because I don't, but I had a strong suspicion that I had a strong suspicion that Joe Biden was not going to be in office for very long. He ended up staying in, though, for 3 years. And I think that is where the problem came in, because maybe he wasn't informed of the plan, that he was supposed to step down and Kamala Harris was supposed to be the president. And as I said already, he looked kind of disgruntled that he had to step down lately. You see him wearing Trump hats and things like that, because I don't believe he ever wanted to step down, but that was part of the plan, I believe. And like I said, it just seems like it didn't go according to plan. But there are still 2 months between now, yes, it's November 11, 11/11. There are still 2 months before Donald Trump officially takes office. That means there is still time, if they wanted to throw a what do you call it, a monkey wrench into things. If they wanted to seize power, if they wanted to prevent Donald Trump from taking office somehow and keep Kamala Harris on as the president into 2025, that would cause all kind of chaos and destruction. And really that goes back to who Kali is, chaos and destruction. That would be the ultimate feminist power play right there, for her to do something that will cause Trump to not be able to enter office, and for her to stay on as the president. However, that seems really far-fetched, and it may not happen. But I would not be shocked in the least bit if that did happen, because I know who she is, especially knowing that she was the first goddess or whatever to appear. They didn't have to use the image of a goddess on the feminist magazine, but they did on that very first issue of Miss, which really reads M's. If you look at it in M's, the letter M is the uh, symbol for Virgo and Scorpio. And now that I think about it, this M could actually resemble the sign of Scorpio, because Scorpio is the M with a sort of like a tail on it that looks sort of like a stinger. And that actually could be the M with the serpent's tail on it. But I'm getting way off track. Like I said, this without a script, I'm all over the place. This video could end up being very long. So this book has quite a bit of historical information about the people behind the early, let's say the first through the third wave feminist movements. And while from anybody familiar with my channels, Daylight Riders and Babylon Watch, you know I get deep into the exposition or the exposing of the divine feminine and the goddesses. It doesn't get as deep into all of that, but it does detail how spiritual these women were and how they were into theosophy and thelema, and how a lot of these occult systems, these occult religions, I guess I can call them religions, were based off of the pursuit of the divine feminine. They were based in let's see, one of my notes here that I had was that let me see, is this it? Chapter 6 deals with two most prominent occult organizations of the late 19th and 20th century, Theosophy and the Golden Dawn. And out of in both of these feminist, there were two feminist figures. You had Alice Bailey and you had Helena Blavatsky, and both of them, I understand why they did it, but both of them had Blavatsky had a journal that she called Lucifer Magazine or Lucifer, and Alice Bailey named her company the Lucifer Publishing Company, or Lucifer Publishing something, and then she eventually changed it to Lucius. But there's this theme of how this whole thing was anti-Christian from the start. These let me go back to the other image so you can see the image of the woman, because this is a perfect example of how these women were operating. How you see this woman in the middle of a circle, this satanic circle, which is 5-pointed star, the pentagram, Venus, and how all of these women who were involved in feminism in the early years were all occultists. They were all I actually wrote a list of the things that of the words that I would use to describe them. I said, first wave feminism was established on the backs of females with dubious business practices. They were con women. They were witches, mediums, and adulteresses. These women who were starting these feminist movements believed in free love. That means they did not believe in being faithful to one man. They thought they should be able to do whatever they wanted with their bodies. You know, my body, my choice, right? And they were having affairs, having children, abandoning their children to have affairs, and having children with the people who they were having affairs with. And it's just absolute madness. And it's all about just rebellion against the Most High God. And it's no wonder to me, as I pointed out in the book, that in the book I wrote, Mystery Babylon Unveiled, Lucifer the Queen of Heaven, that you see the serpent depicted in medieval art very often as a female, then suddenly it stopped. And I've often asked the question online or social media, why did they stop depicting the serpent in the garden as female when it was common in the past? You know, there are a lot of things that you will see or hear in the past that was just sort of just common. It wasn't a strange thing. They didn't think it was weird to say this or to know this or know that, such as, let's say, the earth being flat. At some point in history, that wasn't a thing that you would get mocked for saying or thinking. But then it did become that. Regardless of what you believe the shape of the earth is, there's a point where just suddenly things changed. So in the same way, the serpent in medieval times was depicted as a woman, and it was a woman who was talking to Eve in the garden, and then suddenly it stopped. Suddenly that went away. But what this book also highlights is how Lucifer is depicted among feminists as the liberator of women, like the champion of women. Lucifer is like pro woman, pro female. And maybe I'll be best by just trying to go over some of my notes that I've taken here. So one thing that I noticed is that the author says that, or she gives the idea that women weren't as oppressed as feminists would have us to believe now. They weren't nearly as oppressed. They were protected. They were guarded. Yes, they didn't have as many rights as men had, but they were able to, unlike what feminists tell you, they weren't able to have abortions, or they weren't able to have office, or they weren't able to get involved in politics and other things. They were able to actually do a lot of the things that feminists say they weren't able to do. This was all, again, just propaganda that's being spread by the modern feminists, especially, who try to convince us that women of the past were basically just slaves. So another thing that I took note of here is that the idea of female equality is key to a future utopian society that is enlightened. Again, that lotus has to do with enlightenment, and Kamala seems to be representing that figure, that Kali figure, and the one who is supposed to bring some kind of enlightenment. Even though you look at this woman and you say she doesn't have two cents to rub together, she doesn't have any brains at all. But anyway, so Protestantism opened the floodgates for spiritualism that feminism would be a product of. Now some of these are my own words, I'm paraphrasing, so if it doesn't make sense, that's my fault, because I'm not the smartest guy either. So, but Protestantism, so this may be a controversial point, but what you have in when you had a system of religion that was called Christianity, even though it wasn't really true Christianity, still it was somewhat, there was a singular idea of what Christianity was. But then, I guess there was a big schism between the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church, and that was one break apart. And then there was Martin Luther's thesis, whatever. So there was another schism. And then basically when you got to America, which was an experiment from the beginning, which is Luciferian from the beginning, where you had a bunch of deists who were not believers in the actual God of the Bible, who still called themselves Christians, even though they had no Christian beliefs. And this is why a lot of American Christians need to wake up and smell the ketchup or smell the coffee or whatever, that this was never a Christian nation. But you have more schisms, more denominations, or more demonizations, of more fracturing. And from all of this fracturing and all of these people doing what was right in their own eyes and having all this different spiritual paths coming up, it was just a fertile breeding ground for occultism. And it was enlightenment in the form of first all these so much of these denominations are linked to occult or spiritualism and spiritualism, basically, where it was opening the floodgates for people to be fake healers, to be witches, to be wizards, sorcerers, warlocks, whatever. All of those things were taking place in these denominations. And so, of course, you have feminism springing up. And this was mostly kind of a rejection among women of the Bible. Rejection because they saw the Bible and the God of the Bible as the oppressor of women, the enemy of women. And of course, they see the serpent, Lucifer, and the serpent has traditionally been a symbol of the goddess. They see the serpent as the liberator of women. And so it was anti-Christian from the start, all of these feminists. And so, yeah, no wonder they were, many of them, frauds, con artists, adulteresses. What else? But another thing is, there were many wealthy, influential women who were well connected, and they supported the early suffrage movement, and they were also high level occultists. So I'm not just talking about somebody dabbling around with some tarot cards and things like that. They were deep into astral projection and telekinesis and all kinds of different high level occult spiritual practices. Even as with what's her name? Cameron, oh, what is that one? The woman who married Jack Parsons. I forgot her name. I didn't write her name down. Margaret Cameron, or Cameron Margaret. Maybe it's Margaret Cameron. I can't remember exactly. Maybe, but anyway, a woman like her who opened up her own sex cult and oversaw the sex cult and had people having orgies in order to try to create these children that would be possessed by these spirits, or the moon children who would be possessed by spirits, or I guess what they would call, well, I would just call them spirits. I just try to keep it biblical. Demonic spirits, basically. That was the whole point of these sex rituals. And you had people like her who had these kind of cults, who also got involved with Hollywood. And there's no wonder you see Hollywood filled with this kind of filth, the entertainment industry filled with this kind of stuff. Yeah, they let some people like Diddy get exposed, but the whole industry is filled with all of this. But this book really demonstrates the role that women play, and that is a role that is really under, I'm going to call it subtle, because the serpent is subtle. That's a role that really doesn't get covered in all of our truther movements, exposing things online. The microscope is rarely ever on the women. It may be on the women, but it will always be on the woman as a victim, and never as the perpetrator of some of this stuff, because we've bought into the narrative that women can only be the victims, even though there were cases of pedophilia and women getting involved with not only girls who were younger than them, involved sexually, but involved with boys who were younger than them in these cults, in these secret societies, and in these in these cults, basically. And so another thing that I say, that their ideas of free love and practicing sex magic as being part of the ideal female experience reminds me of the position of the high priestess, which they no doubt discovered in their extensive experience in ancient religious studies. So India seemed to be some kind of mecca for these spiritualists, especially those who were involved in theosophy, which was Helena Blavatsky's little religion that she sort of made up, and she was accused of being a fraud and a counterfeit, and by many people. That seems to be a recurrent accusation with her. Again, like I said, these people were pretty dubious, and they were always kind of nefarious in their dealings with different things. And so first wave feminism was established. I already read that note, and I took note that, so speaking on the topic of pedophilia and things with children, seeing how some cults have treated children as being the property of the entire community, I'm reminded of Hillary Clinton saying, here we go, Hillary Clinton, I'm reminded of her saying, and these are my words, these are not the words from the book, it takes a village to raise a child. When you know what this book lays out here is how it has been a habit of these feminists, these occultist feminists, to have multiple children with multiple men and abandon those children, or at least strip the men of custody of the children. It was always sort of that children didn't belong to the father. But in some cases, it was also that the children didn't belong to the mothers either. They belonged to the community, or they belong, if there was a community or an organization or a cult or a group, such as the what was that called? The Oneida cult? I can't remember. I didn't write it down. The children who were born in this cult belonged to everybody. And the older women mentored the younger men, if you get what I'm saying. And the older men mentored the younger women, if you get what I'm saying. I won't get too much into details, but this was the stuff that was happening. And so what this, putting this in kind of a modern perspective, you see a lot of instances where female teachers, especially kind of recently now, are the number or rate of these female teachers getting exposed for having relations with their students. It's kind of like it's probably always been high, but it's just getting exposed more and more now. This really makes you think about what these women might be involved in behind the scenes. Because I remember seeing actually an episode of this, was it The Simpsons too, that had, what, it was either Marge or maybe that was Family Guy. I think it was The Simpsons though, where Marge ran into a secret society of women who wore these pins to show that they had committed adultery with on their husbands. And I think Marge was tempted to join this group. I believe that was The Simpsons. But that was just scratching the surface. This whole thing of, oh, just we're a bunch of women who've committed adultery against our husbands, so we're a group of these women. No, that's probably much more beyond just having a committing adultery. But yeah, these female secret societies exist. Michael Tsarian had mentioned it, or he had a series called, it was like Female Illuminati. I don't know if he was really on the right track with a lot of stuff, but he did have some insight to the so-called female Illuminati. That I think that's just his way of saying that there was an elite, a female elite that was out there who were pulling strings and who are mostly unexposed. And as this book goes into a lot of those people who had connections, a lot of these really rich and powerful women who just go under the surface, under the radar, and we expose the men, but we don't expose these women as well. And they were putting a lot of funding behind first wave feminism and second wave feminism, and they were um let me just continue reading these notes here. Let's say beginning with Gloria Steinem, feminism becomes a government CIA operation. But there was a lot going on before that time, but we're getting into like the 60s and 70s at this point with this note. So, and not, it wasn't just anymore, it wasn't just a movement carried by Thelemists, Theosophists, and secular scientific enemies of the Bible. So, yeah, Thelema, Theosophy, all has to do with this divine feminine stuff. In Thelema, you had the Scarlet Woman, you had the Lady in Red, Babylon, Babalon, and she was the woman who they wanted to incarnate in order to bring about the Aeon of Horus, or to bring about Horus. And Horus is just another name for that teacher, the Antichrist, right? That great teacher. And they all, even Theosophists, believe the Maitreya, this is talking about the Antichrist, this son of perdition. And they all were, had the central figure or importance was on this divine feminine, this rebellious female spirit. And like I said, even on the secular or the scientific side, there is still a convergence where they want to depopulate. They want to make it so that women can control their birth. And of course, due to this feminism, the birth rates just dropped. It dropped. It is almost getting to the point where it's below the point of recovery. And that's because women were then, or they stopped having as many children, and the children that they were conceiving, they were getting rid of, so to speak. So Alice Bailey is another person who has major influence. She has a major influence with the UN. So again, some of these names we know, but there are plenty of names that we don't know that have not been exposed. So both the occult and feminist agencies were promoting feminism. I'm sorry, that's not feminist agency. That both the occult and I think I don't know what I wrote in that note there. Let me just go to page 114 and see what I was looking at. Because I'm like, what did I write there? I must have been distracted and my hand just wrote something that was on my mind but wasn't really what I intended to write. So what was I thinking here on page 114? So if I can find it, because I put it in quotes, so I think I know exactly where I was looking to. So both the both the occult and government agencies. Yeah, I knew I was supposed to put, I don't know why I put feminist agencies there. I knew that was supposed to be something else. Okay, both the occult and government agencies were promoting feminism, universal New Age religion, and psychoactive drugs to the American public during the same period of the Cold War. It all goes hand in hand. Feminism, New Age, and government agencies got involved in it too, because at the root of it, you have this drive towards a utopia, and the divine feminine is absolutely necessary for us to reach that utopia. I shouldn't say us, but you know what I mean. So there is a blending of goddess worship and technological revolution, and I actually know, I have a video about it's called the image of the beast. Yeah, it's called the image of the beast. Let's see if I can find it. Do I have it in this playlist? I don't think I do, but I'm going to check this playlist to see if it's in there. Yeah, here it is. The image of the beast, the AI goddess. Now, they may not end up naming any kind of AI or whatever after Gaia. However, I was able to see and understand the relation between technology and goddess worship. And it goes much more beyond even what I put into that video. According to this book, there's a technology is going to supposedly take us to a place where even women are not necessary for children to be born anymore. Or at least women won't be so-called burdened by childbirth. They'll be liberated or set free from childbirth. So, what else? I think I'm going to get ready to wrap this up. I'm already going kind of long. So on page 122, I had quoted the book where it says, the trends certainly mark a return to the goddess, and the Greek pagan myth of Pandora's box illustrates how sometimes getting what you want can truly become a curse. Now, since she mentioned in this book Pandora's box, I have to bring up the point that when you look at a myth like Pandora's box, what is it? You had Pandora being Pandora herself, not just, it's not just Pandora's box. It's not about the box. It was about Pandora. So people will often say, oh, it's Pandora's box, because they're focused on the box, but they don't realize that Pandora herself was the curse. It wasn't the box that was the curse. It was Pandora who was the curse. She was given to man by the gods. And I believe, if I'm not getting my mythologies mixed up, I believe it was because maybe it was either Prometheus who had stolen fire from the gods, or it was for another reason. I can't remember if I'm getting my mythologies mixed up or not. But Pandora was given to man as a so-called gift. But the gift was a curse, because they knew that Pandora would end up unleashing evil upon man. And she opened up the box, but again, it wasn't about the box, it was about Pandora. And in the same way, it was Eve who was the one who ate the forbidden fruit, and caused Adam to do so as well, and everything transpired after that. So you have this, at the center of all of this stuff, you always have this female figure. And even if you go beyond Eve, who do you have? You have the serpent. Now, what are the odds that the serpent is not another female character? And as I have, I believe I've shown in my book, and as a matter of fact, since I'm making this video, why not just show the, since I'm making this video, why not, let's see here, just go over here and see if I can find my channel. Oh, one of my channels, I have a lot of them. Yep. And so I just posted a, I guess you could say a promo for the website dedicated to the book. And there are ways you can get this book for free. You know, for those who cannot or will not pay, it's fine. Just, I'll give it to you for free. So yeah, in this book though, I believe I've demonstrated that the serpent in the garden was a female. And although I'm not making videos on that topic anymore, since I'm covering this book, I guess technically I am. I guess technically I am still making videos on that topic, but not dedicated like I was before. But I just wanted to share with you all what was in this book that I was reading, and comment on it, and I guess you can call it a review. So it's a good book. I recommend it. I think it was really important to understand the origins, not just the origin, but the spiritual origins of feminism and the spiritual goals of feminism too, because it is not equality. It is not. It is about creating a utopia, and depending on who you might ask, though, that utopia either involves the complete obliteration of gender at all, or the supremacy of the female gender. There's going to be one of those two, either the obliteration of gender or the supremacy of female gender. So we'll see which way that ends up working out. But either way, it is totally and completely against the order of the Most High God, Yahweh, or whatever you prefer to call him. So my voice is really dry and I can't talk anymore, so I'm going to bring this video to a close. So thank you all for listening, and may our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Yahweh Shai, bless you.